Fourth grade ELA text set 8, biography, artist. The essential question is, why is creativity important for the individual, for the culture? The next artist you will hear about had an interesting nickname, Action Jackson. In fact, that is the title of the biography I'm going to read. It was written by Jane Greenberg and Sandra Jordan. What kind of person comes to your mind when you hear the nickname Action Jackson? The artist's actual name is Jackson Pollock. Jackson is the subject of this biography. Why was he called Action Jackson? Let's see what information is included on the back cover. It says, Jackson Pollock, known as Action Jackson because of the amount of movement and emotion as expressed in his paintings, did not paint like a normal artist. He neglected the easel and chose house paint over oils or watercolors. Some liked his modern style and some didn't, but everyone agreed he was a true original. So, what do you know about Action Jackson now? Are you wondering what made him an original? I am too. Some of this account is imagined. We don't know if the sequence of events during the months of May and June 1950, when Jackson Pollock painted Lavender Mist, was exactly as we have described it. But we do have many first-hand reports about the summer when he made so many of his great paintings. His life in springs, the way he dressed, the way he talked and walked, and most important, the way he painted, and on those we have based our story. So, authors of biographies often include imagined scenes, but they are based on facts, all the end. We'll read some notes about the facts the authors used to write this book. Okay. In the afternoon, Jackson Pollock puts on his paint-splattered boots and walked across the yard. The wind blows in from Gardner's Bay, bringing the scent of salt marshes and sea lavender. His eyes miss nothing. Sunlight on the tree branches, tangled stalks of blackberry bushes, beetles crawling in the grass underfoot. Caw, caw, the crow he tamed flies down and lands on his shoulder. His border collie, Gip, runs in circles, demanding a walk across the fields and down a country road to the wide, sandy beach. But Jackson turns and keeps it going. The gray, weathered barn used to be filled with rusted machinery, old fishing gear, and broken tools. Now it is his art studio, a place for painting. Some artists put a canvas on an easel or hang it on a wall. Not Jackson. He spreads his out like a sheet, smoothing it flat with his large hands. He wants his paintings to be big as the sky, out west where he grew up. Flat as the marshland behind the house. Sunlight pokes through cracks in the boards, and flies buzz in the dusty studio air. Sliding doors rattle on their frames. He sits silent on the floor, staring at the blank canvas. Some artists cover the canvas with a base coat of white paint. Not Jackson. He wants the paint to soak into the surface, leaving bare patches peeking through the stains of color. Some painters use oil paint or watercolor. Not Jackson. He'll use ordinary house paint from the hardware store to make this painting. Some artists paint pictures of flowers or people or landscapes. Not Jackson. His expression, his thoughts and feelings directly on the canvas, calling it energy and motion made visible. And still he sits surrounded by the cans of enamel, brushes stiff with dried paint, knives, sticks, a spatula, and canvases, waiting. At last he stands. He chooses a stick and dips it into a can of syrupy paint. Slowly he circles the canvas, stepping around the edges, straddling the corners. Black lines form a tangled web. Now he chooses a brush, working toward the middle. Sprays of color, tan, teal, yellow, and white. An athlete with a paintbrush, he uses his whole body to make the painting. Layers build with each gesture, new colors emerging, blending and disappearing into the wet surface. He swoops and leaves like a dancer, paint trailing from a brush that doesn't touch the canvas. I want to make a longer and longer line. I want to keep it going. The authors describe Jackson as an athlete with a paintbrush. Hours go by like minutes. Suddenly he feels exhausted, used up, his inspiration gone. Things get in the way of the flow, like roots blocking a soil line. He puts down the brush and goes into the house to help make supper, his mind filled with thoughts about the wet painting back on the studio floor. The next afternoon, Jackson prowls around the canvas studying his work, but he doesn't pick up a brush. Instead, he walks to the beach, past the sandy marshes and the tall spartina grass, then waves in the breeze. He spends hours sitting on a grassy dune watching the gulls. So what are some things that inspired Jackson? In the barn, the layers of paint dry. Almost a week passes before he drips a brush and begins his dance. What is he thinking? Does he see the sunlight beach, the patterns of waves, the interlacing branches of the tree, lush summer grass outside the studio? I don't know where my pictures come from. They just come, and the paint flows. Like the Native American sand painters he saw as a boy out west, he moves around the canvas, coaxing the paint into loops and curves. On the floor, I am much more at ease. I can walk around it, work from the floor, four sides, be in the painting. Fireworks splatter of rosy pink, twisting ropes of white, spangles of silver, a lavender glow where pink and blue, black meet. Jackson listens to jazz recordings in the evenings. He likes musicians who improvise, inventing their own melodies as they play. While he paints, the notes spin over and over in his memory. Swish and swish again. The rhythm of the brush matches the rhythm of the music. If a penny fell out of his pocket, he would leave it. An insect lands in the wet paint, and there it stays. Nails and tacks become part of the texture. He caresses the surface with sticky paint-stained hands. One, then two handprints across the canvas. His eyes move up and down, back and forth with light steps. He follows the sweep of his brush. He stops in a pool of paint, pauses, paint, and more paint, dripping, pouring, flinging. The painting has a life of its own. I try to let it come through. Again he stops. He climbs a ladder to look down at the whole canvas. Every muscle aches, but his eyes, his mind, his heart know the painting is finished. So what language on this page helps describe Jackson's method of painting? Some people will be shocked when they see what he has created. Some angry, some confused, some excited, some filled with a happiness they can hardly explain, but everyone will agree Jackson Pollock is doing something original, painting in a way that no one has ever seen before. This is called Number 1, 1950, Lavender Mist. This is an image of the real painting Jackson created. What do you think of it? Why do you think people have mixed reaction to it? For the next few days, he and his wife, Lee, plant the vegetable garden. They drive into town in their Model A Ford. He digs for clams on the beach. On the weekend, friends drop by for a party. It will take another week for the thick paint to dry. Then Jackson and Lee will tack the canvas to the studio wall. Jackson sits silent, staring at the blank canvas spread on the floor of the barn, waiting. Soon he will dip his brush in a can of paint, lifting it high in the air to begin again. So let's talk about the way the author ends the story. What are you thinking? Jackson Pollock was a man of few words, a big man with a rough and tumble cowboy style. He was born in Cody, Wyoming, the youngest of 5 brothers. Hard times kept his family on the move to Arizona, then to California, always looking for better opportunities. Finally, his mother insisted that they settled in Los Angeles, where she hoped a good education would help her son succeed in life. So during the summer of 1950, Jackson painted some of his greatest works. After November 1st, 1950, he began work on number 31, 1950. Sometime early that summer, a photographer named Hans Nema received permission from Lee and Jackson to photograph the artist in the studio. For the next few months, Nema took many photographs, including those of Jackson working on the painting. that would be called Autumn Rhythm. Nama's still photographs in the 20-minute film he made form a unique record of the way the artist worked. By 1951, Jackson was moving away from his so-called drip paintings, though he still painted in this style occasionally, shaped from nature. Animals and people began to reappear in his work. He was famous now, but he told friends that all his attention made him feel like a clam without a shell. Jackson struggled with alcoholism and depression for most of his adult life. When he was sober, he painted well, but when he was drinking, he felt discouraged and temperamental. His career was cut short by a fatal car crash in 1956. He died at age 44. Due to his groundbreaking paintings and those of other abstract expressionists, New York became the center of the art world, and a new American art was born.